Hello, everybody. It is on. Okay. Hi, my name is Tim Anderson. I'm the programming coordinator for the 32nd Annual Florida Film Festival, and this is our sort of legendary Filmmaker Forum. It's really the longest running forum that we've ever done in the festival. Going on is so far back I can't even remember. Also, it's, I guess, day 8 of the festival, and I can't remember anything anymore. So what we'll do here is we have a collection of incredible filmmakers who have made a barrage of very, very different projects that we will put on the stage for a conversation amongst themselves and our moderator, Charles Sutter. And then we will also open up to you, the audience. There will be a volunteer with a microphone that you will need to ask your question into, because this event is being live streamed, and if you do not speak into the microphone to ask your question, then the world outside of this venue does not know that you exist. So thank you so much for coming out. We've got a little clips reel so you can see a little bit about each one of their projects. Most of their films are still going to have their second screenings going forward, so hopefully you'll see something that you've already seen and loved, and you'll ask some questions, or something will spark your interest and you'll be excited to go out and check that out, because these films are absolutely incredible and these filmmakers are absolutely wonderful. So thank you for joining us, and go ahead, Pete.
Duels were fought in defense of what the law would not defend, a gentleman's sense of personal honor. In 1808, 2 Frenchmen had dueled in hot air balloons over Paris. One was shot and killed along with the second. 35 years later, their cousins had tried to settle their differences by sculling each other with billiard balls.
So you really just like this all the time?
I'm really just like this all the time.
We live in a huge mystery. This incredible situation, this 4 billion-year-old planet where everything's perfect for life to evolve. But for all we know, we're all in the Matrix. The only thing we know is cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Everything else we take on faith. Buddhism seems okay. The Dalai Lama's got it figured out, it seems.
So, do you believe in...
I did growing up. I was afraid of God. I'm still sort of afraid, but I don't believe he exists.
What happened?
Just life.
I call him by his last name Parker because we met in the military, and his name on his uniform was Parker. His reputation did precede him. At the time, he was a player. He chased me, and he chased for a while, and finally I let him catch me.
40-some years later, here we are.
Yo lo que vi de que ella se estaba bañando, y cuando yo vi del gran poco de sangre.
Me pusieron las esporas. Más bien me duele la mano.
Imelda dijo que el padrastro era quien la había violado.
Después que salga del hospital, supuestamente voy para la cárcel de mujeres.
Hemos logrado la liberación de 33 mujeres y nos quedan 18 condenadas todavía.
Welcome to A Street.
How's it go? How's it going, everybody? Tim said before, it's like day 7 of the festival, so like we've enjoyed everybody so much, and at the same time, I don't even remember my name anymore. So I'm Charles. In a little bit, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. So if you have any questions about anything, definitely remember them, because we're going to get to them in a second. But first, I wanted to start just by having you guys introduce yourselves and maybe just tell a tiny bit about the movie, just like a log line or just a brief introduction for the audience of the movie. Good, great.
Hi, I'm Daniel Yoon. My feature, excuse me, my feature is called East Bay, starring Constance Wu. It's about several folks in their 30s and 40s in the East Bay of the Bay Area who are just starting to realize that, or starting to admit to themselves that they're failures, and they really don't want to deal with that.
I have no idea what that's like.
Me neither.
Same. My name's Justin Matthews. I directed and co-wrote a movie called The Duel. It's about 2 guys who try and have a duel. It's one guy finds out his best friend's been sleeping with his girlfriend, and instead of just having words about her, get into a fist fight, he challenges him to an old school duel, like Hamilton Burr style. But they're 2 modern guys. It's not a period piece, so they don't know how to do anything. It's starring Dylan Sprouse, Colin McAuliffe, and Patrick Warburton.
In Florida, that's like a true story. That's not.
Exactly.
That's not.
If we didn't do well in Florida, I don't know where we would do well.
I was gonna say it might play like absurdist in like the Northeast, but here that's very like it's a real story.
I'm Sharon Leese, and I co-directed a short film called Parker. It's a documentary. It features a theme of Black joy, which is something that's missing from today's cinema on a regular basis. And it's about a family who's just, I think you'll love them, and they delay a decision for 40 years and then finally make a decision, which brings a lot of joy to their lives.
Hi, my name is Yu Lee. I am the writer, director, stop motion animator for Welcome to A Street. And it's a slice of life story about my life and my husband when we moved to Jersey City, and all this weird events happened to question our decision to move there. But ultimately, those strange events makes us fall in love with the neighborhood and get accepted.
I was told that I need to get the microphone in my hand. Good morning, my name is Paula Heredia. I am the filmmaker and the director of a film called Imelda is Not Alone. It's a documentary short that I shot over the last 4 years on a girl that is caught in the legal system in El Salvador after she wrongly is accused of having an abortion, and how that saga continues over her teenager life, and the people who actually takes the time and the effort to make a difference and get these girls out, because she's just one example of what's going on.
It's a very good movie. It's a heavy watch, but not. It's inspiring in a lot of ways. Before we got too far underway, I'll remind you of this before we leave. But these filmmakers still have screenings left, so it's great that you came here. Don't forget to also go see the movies, because that's the point of a film festival, is to go see the movie part, not just the talking to the filmmakers part. The Duel is today at 2 at the Regal. Will you be there?
Yeah. It's one. Yes.
That's why I came.
I didn't want to assume. I didn't know.
I will be there.
Okay. Came for this part.
You never, like, if you assume, sometimes it goes bad. So Parker is playing today. I'll be doing that Q&A as well with Racist Trees. The other filmmaker, Sarah Newlands, who made Racist Trees, will also be there. So we'll be at the Enzian today at 5. Imelda is Not Alone is today at the Regal at 4. And Welcome to 8th Street is tonight at 9:15 at the Regal. So I'll remind you guys of this later, but just so you know, if there's anything that you're like, oh, wow, I really do need to go see that movie, you still can see all of them. East Bay, I'm going to assume that it's going to be streaming at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so keep that in mind. So everybody kind of has their own story about how you come to these projects. So I was curious if you could just give a little bit of a background about how you found each one of the movies, each of you found the movie that you wound up making and submitting. Let's go the other way this time, so you have a time. I don't want to put it all on you, all the pressure to start. I'm generous.
Thank you. I make films that inspire me by one particular reason, which is what can one person do to build the society that we all desire to be in. And those stories are usually needs to be close to my life. When I made a documentary before on a toucan in Costa Rica that had been abused and lost half of the beak, and I followed the story and between not knowing if the bird was going to die and a whole social movement that came around, and both designed a big, in 3D printing that could save the bird, but also a movement of people who helped change the law in Costa Rica to save wild animals. That was very inspiring. And when I showed that film in a festival in El Salvador, these friend of mine who are very active in saving these girls told me, how can we make our girls a toucan and call attention to them? And of course, that in your mind, how can you not? And then the process was a long process because I was trying to see if there was a story that I could really find to follow as a film, not just as and little by little, getting access, following people, and then this story came through, and I went not knowing what was going on, just with my phone, and the footage at the beginning is a little rough in terms of how it was shot, but then I realized that there was a story that could be told through film, and that it didn't matter how bad that footage was, I had to use it. So that's how the story started 4 years ago.
So I am a visual designer just by nature. My background is in fashion, and I transitioned over to animation in 2017. And I love stop motion as a medium. It's a very difficult and disciplined medium, but it allows you to control the visual that I want to tell in the world building. And it has to be a story worth telling because it's just so physically hard and demanding. So, and I like this, I lived on this street on 8th Street in Georgia City, New Jersey. I lived there for 10 years, and it's wackier than what I depicted in this movie. And events loosely did happen. Wild turkey did come, and it was actually crazier. And I left the city and came to Los Angeles, and then COVID happened, and we were all isolated, and I thought back to what really gave me humanity and connected us, and it's a story about community, and it's a story I knew, and I revisited this neighborhood with a few of my shorts that I did, and it literally got me through COVID. And what I like about this story is it's comedy, and I think comedy unites us. It entertains us, and it's multi-generational, which is life, and it's imperfect, and it's bizarre, which is what I think of life. And I like showing empathy in my stories because I think we all need that, especially now more than ever. And yeah, so this is a true story, loosely, that based, what I know. Yeah.
Sue was telling me before this started that she applied to the animation school at USC without a reel. She was just like, I'll just give that a shot and tell them what the story is. Like one of the best schools in the world for making movies. She was like, I got it.
No, and I was talking to you, and I had no reel. I had no business being in animation, but I was doing this in my house, and I was spending so much time and money. I'm like, this is just going to become the most expensive hobby ever. So maybe I can really learn the fundamentals of animation. So I applied USC with just one essay. Was like, here's my idea, this is what I know, and this is what I want to do. And they told me later, they read the essay, and they were like, well, she's not boring. Let's just give it a shot. So that's what happened.
I really wish I could pull off the phrase "playa playa," but I can't. It doesn't work for me. This is somebody else's.
Yeah, that one always delivers in a crowd. It's great. So for me, when I look to do a film, one of the things that's really important to me is to tell an intimate story, is to tell something that is heartwarming and real and authentic, and it kind of starts with a person or people. But I always like the films to then have something that's related to some larger context, and that's what I actually found in Parker. I had known Adolphus, the patriarch, who's in the film for over 15 years. He was a house painter of mine, and we somehow need a lot of painting, and he has been at our house over the years, and I was always talking to him about his life, and he had such a fascinating life from where he grew up in the South and going to Vietnam, and every story he'd tell me, as filmmakers, we're always like, that could be something. That could be a story I want to tell. But I hadn't really found the right one. And then he one day talked to my husband, who's an attorney, about wanting to change the name of 4 people in his family who didn't have his name, but they were supposed to. And he said, just inquired, and my husband was telling me about it, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's the story. Because it was really so interesting to me, because it's multi-generational, and it's grandkids changing their name, kind of righting a wrong, and there's a reason and a twist in the story about why he didn't, these 4 people did not have his name. But there's everything to do about naming, and there's so many themes and things to think about in terms of what a name means to us, and then there's conventions in terms of choosing your own name, and for Black Americans, there's a whole history about not being able to choose your own name. So that was kind of the larger context of like, how do you claim your name or reclaim a name when you're a Black American? So there was a lot in there, and it's a 13-minute short, and it expresses Black joy, which I'm really proud of.
Inspiration for the duel.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, a guy finds out his best friend's been sleeping with his girlfriend. Not a true story. My best friend did not sleep with my girlfriend that I know of. I've been asked this question every single time.
That's the twist.
Yeah, just turn this into a therapy session. So it's so funny, too, because filmmakers always assume that anything that you do is based on real-life experience. So anytime I talk to a filmmaker, they're like, wow, first feature, congratulations. I'm like, thank you. They're like, what is it about? I'm like, well, one guy finds out his best friend's been sleeping with his girlfriend. They decide to have a duel, and they go, I'm so sorry.
That's the secret, is that we're not very creative.
Yeah.
We just steal from ourselves.
So how the duel actually came about is it's a COVID baby. This happened during the pandemic, during the lockdown. I was writing for a TV show, and the showrunner asked if she could put me up for a writing competition. And one of my best friends, who I think is a fantastic writer, we'd never collaborated on anything before, so I called him up. I was like, hey, do you want to try to work on this thing with me? And he's like, sure. My roommate just moved to Puerto Rico. I have an extra room at the place. Come move in for a week, and we'll write this thing. I was like, great. That turned into a year. So I stayed at his place for a year. We just started writing a bunch of stuff. We thought the world was ending, and on one particular day, we watched In Bruges 2 times in a row by Martin McDonagh. And the next morning, we woke up, we walked, and we went to go get coffee. And on the walk, we were like, God, that's such a good movie. We were like, why would one friend want to kill another friend? And we were like, well, there's probably a lady involved. And we were like, well, wouldn't it be kind of funny if the guy was pretty much open and public about the fact that he was going to kill his friend? And we were like, yeah, I mean, honestly, as weird as that sounds, that actually was pretty common not that long ago. So common, in fact, that, you know, senators, presidents, Supreme Court justices, actors, poets, they would all partake in the art of dueling. And we were like, well, what if two modern guys tried to have a duel? And then that's pretty much where the idea started. So it started from in Bruges, and a lot of time locked in an apartment. And, you know, if you watch the film, you might get a glimpse of that.
I love that, like, narrative filmmakers are like, a year is so much time, and like documentary filmmakers are like, a year? That's, you barely started making the movie in a year. I don't even know what the story is by the end of the year.
East Bay is my second feature. My first feature was called Post Concussion, and that was partly autobiographical. Oops. It's about a successful young management consultant who gets a serious head injury, then his life changes in funny and surprising ways. And in the process, he can't do the things that he used to do, but he learns humility, gratitude, becomes a much better person, et cetera, et cetera. And the message of that film was, it's a genre film, sort of the lifestyle wake-up genre, is that no matter what, you can find new and better ways in which to be successful, no matter what trauma you've gone through. And then I made that film, and then afterward I realized that's just an awful message, in a way. It was a feel-good movie. People really liked it. They felt great when they saw it. It was funny. It did well in the festival circuit, and it got distribution. But then I realized films like that they don't make me feel good. They make me feel bad. And feel-good movies generally do is as if it's not enough to have gone through something. You also have to create this whole new narrative that you are actually, successful and happy. And what is the alternative? It's not clear, and that's what I wanted to explore in East Bay. Like, can you really have a film where it's not a total bummer, it's not a tragedy, but you don't arrive at some sort of happy, successful ending, and it's still an interesting journey, and that was, for me, something I wanted to look at.
When did you start working on this one?
A long time ago. It's like a documentary time. So
it's about 20 years, right, between the two movies?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I did have a bad injury, head injury, and then I had a second one in 2008, which was when I was originally going to shoot.
Oh. Is it just because I know this
Yeah.
from IMDb? But was it hockey related?
No, it wasn't. It was the first injury was just an uninsured driver driving on a suspended license, and I was crossing a street at an intersection. But the second one was it's a strange mystery, and I'd rather not get into it because I don't even know. I woke
You
up
must
in a
tell
hospital.
us all of your scary personal injury.
Yeah, no, why not?
No.
So,
as filmmakers, we bare our souls, but there's still some things we keep behind. If anybody in the audience has a question, just remember that we need you to say it into a microphone because it is being broadcast to other places. Where is the audience microphone? Is it out there someplace? It is at the back. So if anybody has a question, at the back of the theater there is a microphone. You can. I think is the volunteer going to make their way to the. Yes. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and an audience, the volunteer rather, will get to you. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. George Ellis. I'm actually an unconventional attendee here. I'm actually a surgeon, and I've done mostly trauma, so I understand your pain there. I've done mostly medical films, either promotional for the hospital or presenting new procedures, and so I was wondering. I'm trying to venture out into doing some more film. Have any of you had any experience doing YouTube videos? Has that been part of your portfolio, if I could say, and then moving forward to what you have done in the recent past?
What is this YouTube he speaks of? So, do any of you have social media presences that you do sort of stuff for online?
Well, I can speak to that, although it's stop motion. So when I did, I got into film because I became a mom, and I just, very late in my life, and I just got really into it. That's my personality. I get really into it. So I wanted to make lullaby for my daughter, and I didn't grow up here, so I didn't know any English lullaby. So I made a song, and my composer friend finished for me, and I wanted to keep it just in case when my daughter grows up and teenager, she hates me. I'm gonna go, I loved you once. So anyway, and the only way I can make a video is I can move objects, right? So I was like, okay, I love photography, so I can do it. And I got so into it, I stopped working for 6 months, and this is all I did. I spent so much money buying, camera and all that stuff, and I put it on YouTube, and I made another one called ABC, and I put it on YouTube, and it went viral. And I'm like, okay, so something about YouTube is they changed all these rules. It's really hard to make any money, but what it did for me is like, oh, there is an audience out there. I make $20 a month. That's great. I spent so much money, but I'm like, it just gave me, okay, so this is a vehicle. So I think when you first do anything, you do it because you love it, because you will be on the giving end of it, meaning you'll be giving so much of your time, passion, and money towards honing in your craft. So you're not going to be going after it, even YouTube, for money. It's just to check it out, to see if it's out there, there's an audience. And I think there's something that I really believe in, that it's not my word. Don't be precious with your work. And you're better than one project, meaning don't be afraid to show your work and be copied, whatever, because you're better than that. Like you have infinite pool of stories to draw from. So I say, why not? Don't limit yourself, do it. If that's what you want to do, you don't need any validation. You have everything in you. I mean, you're a doctor, you even have money, so do it.
Thank you very much.
There's a little bit of professional jealousy there.
Yes.
It looks like there's a couple questions, in the middle there.
So it was great to hear the stories about how long it took you to get all these projects done and how long it took you to write them. But could you talk a little bit about how once you were ready to go into production, how you were able to get the support, raise the money? Did you get grants? Did you do crowdfunding? And how long did that take?
Well, first you should work on the morning show, and then it seems to all be downhill from there. Everybody has a different process.
Yep.
Yeah.
The good part about making a film that takes so long is that the story, especially in documentaries, is the story evolves in front of your eyes, and you could not tell the story 4 years later, the first year. The bad thing is that you do want to finish the film yesterday, and you do want to have the funding. So it's always a catch-22, and you're always looking for ways to break that circle of, I don't have money, I cannot make the film. And the good part is that nowadays technology allows you to have a lot of flexibility about just shooting the film. I mean, as I said, I started with my iPhone, and in many circumstances I did that. You don't get funding because a written page with a pitch means nothing. You need to kind of prove in video, in film, what the idea is. I mean, it's gotten through the years worse and worse, because it kind of like you have to have the finished film before and say, oh, okay, I know what you mean now. But so there is some funding that is available for documentaries, and sometimes you just go for entities that are kind of interested on your topics, or you apply for certain funds. But it's really hard. I mean, as an independent filmmaker, you have to find a way to invest your own money, your own resources, your own friends, to get things done, and hopefully eventually someone's going to see it, which is the first thing you want, or someone's going to buy it if you are lucky.
If it feels like you're chasing money as much as you're making movies a lot of the times, right? Yeah. And I think that's kind of the reality of being an independent filmmaker in the world in general. There was another question.
But I think that, I'm sorry, just one more thing is, but I think that you need to make sure that you get engaged in a project that you can handle, assuming that you're going to be the only hero in the story, in terms of funding and being supported by you, and at the same time keep looking for money. And if you're lucky, maybe that works. But if you just sit waiting for these resources and the money, it's just very frustrating if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, money is just such a difficult thing for independent filmmakers, especially now with like a lot of content out there. But it makes me think about. I mean, I tortured basically everybody in my immediate family, and my friends learned how to beg. But I used to think, when I was a kid, I used to hear the expression "suffering for art," and I used to think of that as staring into the void, or going through some sort of the angst that your characters are going through, your subjects are going through. But to me, it's much more basic. It's like, oh God, how am I going to pay the rent? Or how can I ask for this another favor from this person who I've asked so many favors from? And that is, once you lock in on what you're doing, and you're going to do this film no matter what, you're just on this train, and you have to get it done. And that's, I don't know, to me there was no easy way around it other than winning the lottery. But that part is tough.
Do Cole or Constance help? Cole Sprouse, kind of an indie darling, and
This has happened to Dylan his whole life. It's Dylan, not Cole.
Oh,
it's okay.
They're twins. It's not as
They
bad
are.
as it
No,
sounds.
it happens to both of them. Yeah, I mean, I can comment on this because I think for any aspiring filmmakers, funding is probably the most difficult part of the entire process, because it's a famously terrible way to make money, so people don't want to put money in it. And now that I've made one feature, I know everything. Let me tell you, I got 100% of my features made. Just bullet points. So the first thing is you have to write a script that you think is good enough to make, and secondly, that's actually makeable at an indie budget. The next thing that happened for us is we sent that script out because we were proud enough of it, and they sent it to some other people, and my co-writer had worked with Dylan at one point, and we actually sent him the script just because he's a history nerd, not necessarily because we were trying to get him to be in the movie. We just wanted notes from people that we thought would have an interesting take. And he got in touch with us in like 48 hours and said, not only do I love the script, but I want to be in it. Like, how can we get this made? And we were like, okay, so that's for a movie of our budget. That's someone who's bankable. So we started to put together a pitch deck, and we started to talk to other actors in our network and started pulling together people who could play certain roles. And then once I had a deck that looked good with a tentative cast attached, I started reaching out to people who had produced indie movies before, again for advice, because I was like, I don't think we're going to be able to go to a bona fide production company necessarily. When we wrote the script, we were kind of like, let's write something that we'll never be able to make because it might be fun, and which I know contradicts my first point. Anyways,
it's the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up reaching out to this guy Zach Spicer, who was a friend of mine from afar. We'd gotten coffee a few times, and he runs a production company in the Midwest. And I sent him the pitch deck and said, hey, I think I have a chance to make this indie film. I need some advice. And when I was getting in the car with my co-writer Luke to drive up to Washington State to visit his aunt, because we're going to see if we could swindle her out of some cash up in Seattle, Zach Spicer calls me, and he has his like American business voice on, and I was like, well, this is a good sign. And he's basically like, hey guys, I think you got something here. I'm interested in making this movie. He's like, I have two stipulations. One, you need to come visit me in Washington State so we can talk about this in person. I was like, we're literally already on the way. And two, he's like, your movie takes place in LA, San Diego, and Mexico. We're going to shoot the whole thing in Indianapolis. He's like, so I don't know if you want to change the script. We're like, absolutely not. We're going to figure this out. He has a big film fund that he decided to put up like 2/3 of the money right there once we went through his notes. And then the rest we hit our networks and just raised private equity.
Did the aunt wind up contributing to the movie?
He produced the film, and he did over half the financing, and that
I
was.
meant the other person that you were going to see on the trip.
They did, but it was a lot easier to get them to contribute after someone else had already put up most of the money. So first money in's the hardest, absolutely the hardest part, and then I think the next trick is always tell the actors' agents that you have the money, and always tell the actors and always tell the money people that you have the actors, and then hope that both of those things come together at the same time.
And that they don't talk to each other and find out that you're absolutely
Never
lying.
let them talk to each other.
Yeah, that's important. That's significant. Looks like there's,
This question is for Miss Paula Heredia. I am writing a project that is based on kids and children, also teenagers who have been affected by war. And I want to know what is the best way to approach this sensitive topic for them, respecting their limits, but also getting enough information to correctly represent their stories.
That's such a good question for you, like the sensitivity of how to
Yeah, I think that comes with the person. I mean, I don't know how to do that. I just be me, and the obvious things. You're obviously respectful and sympathetic with their situation, etc. But you have to build trust, and trust is built through time, and many times as much as you want to connect with someone, it's hard to connect with that person. I mean, when I first interviewed Imelda, she was in the hospital, just handcuffed to a bed, and a girl who had no education, no access to anything. And she looked at me like, what am I going to talk to this person? I mean, as much as I connected with her, I was an stranger to her. It took time, and that's the difference between making a simple reportage of something and making a documentary. You have to spend the time and find that connection with people on the field, being with them. To the point that we recently, this has been years, Imelda saw the film like a week ago, and she is in a very different place now. She was able to go back to school, finish high school. She is now at the university studying nursery, to be a nurse. Nursing, and she saw the film and she said, I'm so glad to see the arc of my own story, but I'm a different person. And I was very afraid of that, because I know that she had blocked other projects. She didn't want to be portrayed as just as a victim, and I totally understand that. And I was, we talked a lot about when do we start promoting the film, and I didn't want to do that before she saw the film. So there's a lot of sensitive things that you need to go through from their point of view, more than just the point of view of I'm a filmmaker and I need to get this film out. But that sensibility goes across creative process. I mean, I have the composer with me here. He was key on bringing that sensibility to the screen, because it's a hard story, and it's technically speaking, the footage, it was really harsh, and finding that those themes for the characters, themes that both represented them and represented my feelings about the character, and I'm talking too much because I think I should give the microphone to Christian, who was the composer of the music.
Hello, how are you? My name is Christian Solis. I am a film composer. I have a company in my country for composing music for film and TV series, advertising, video games, and documentaries. For me, was important to direct the audience to our region, or Central America region. And for this reason, I use rhythms and musical instrument from our region. Imelda is the voice of a lot of women around the world, and to compose music for that, you need to be sensitive to the situation, and I think we need to be part of the solution of this kind of problems or situations. To work in this project was a really good experience for me, because Paula gave me a lot of freedom to do the work, and I feel grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, looks like we got another question.
Hi, I first wanted to thank you all for coming. We
Did
really
I not do that
appreciate
before?
this.
How rude of me. I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Especially so early in the morning after some of us may have had a late night. This question is specifically for Paula. After seeing your movie, I was very curious, since it's a doc and you didn't know how it was going to go. First question is, were you working on anything else in the meantime? And the second part of it is, since Imelda emerged so well at the end, do you think making the movie and she knowing you were making the movie had any drive to get her to accomplish more?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Just the first part. I'm always working in multiple projects. It's partially because your creative brain never stops, but also because you need to eat. So you work in a number of projects that also are other filmmakers' projects that pay my living, and many of those projects pay for Imelda's film. So you work in other people's projects, you get paid, and then you spend the money in your own project. That's probably the reality of most of us. Imelda didn't know what I was doing. I mean, she has her own very hard journey. She knew I was making a film, but part of the reason why I wanted to show her the film before I brought it out is that she had no idea. For example, in the film, I went to her family's house and I spoke to the stepfather who abused her, and that she had no idea that I had done that. I mean, she hadn't seen that. She only knew the footage that I had shot with her. You know, when I was at the hospital with her, when I was in prison with her. She knew the things that where I was present with her, but she didn't know anything else that was going on and that I had shot. So when she saw it, it was a major thing. I mean, when I showed the film, it was like 6 people very close to her, her therapist, you know, one of the things that has happened for her is that one of the lawyers actually ended up adopting her legally. So she has a new mother, and so her mother was there, and so that sense of safety, the safe net for her when she saw the film, it was very, very, even if it's powerful for one, you know, as an audience, for her it was really very shocking.
When did you know while shooting it that not only that the story was interesting, but that you had a movie on your hands? Like, how quickly into shooting were you like?
Well, I follow, I mean, Imelda is just one case. There's many cases, and as, you know, the activists said at the end, you know, they were able to get at least 35 women out of prison. I was following like 8 stories. I followed both the girls, their lives, their legal cases, and for a long time I didn't, you know, I thought it was going to be a film about a number of them or all of them, and eventually I came to the conclusion that to tell the story, it needed to be one person, because what was important is to see at the human level, connect with one person that you can feel. I mean, this is a story beyond being a story about someone who is wrongly accused of having an abortion and all the consequences of that. It's really a cautionary tale of what happens in a country that that were lost are being undermined in terms of women's rights and reproductive rights. And that's so much what's going on in the United States, where I've been living for many years. And is that what really made me make the film that could be a cautionary tale for what's going on here? And so it is easier to not to get confused with how we all, especially in this country, relate to that story when it's one person and it's a human story rather than a kind of like a montage of cases that happen in another country.
Awesome. Was there? I thought I saw another hand go up back there. Oh, in the front, there's one. Down here. I'm gonna guess this is about animation.
Yep. It is. I'm a
I know
big
things,
fan
you guys.
of yours, and I discovered your work because of Stephen Wong Jr., who is from Leica.
Yep.
And I did some research on your website, and I found out that you got the Leica Fellowship for your last film.
Yes, I did.
Which was amazing, and I wanted to know more about how that process went for you.
Right, and this also ties in with the other question about funding. So, so the Leica Animation Fund is through Film Independent, and it's a diversity program for so a person of color. And so I applied, and they usually don't give it to student, but they did, I think, partly because what you said about, like, in order to get funding for any fellowship or any grants, they like to see that you can complete the film. So you have to kind of show a proven track of finishing at least one short. And when COVID happened, I made a short about a short called Poem by Alba. And that came about because, it's funny because, the maturity gives you a different perspective. I could have done this in my 20s because, in your 20s, you don't know what life is really about. So I'm 50 today, and now I'm like a little bit mature, so I know what things are. So when I first came to school, half of people were really supportive, and half people wrote me off and said, you're too late. And I had a stop motion teacher who literally told me, you're not going to do anything with this, you're just wasting your time. And it made me cry, I'm not going to lie, but it was really the best thing that ever happened to me, because what I did was like, well, I'm going to show you. And also, I'm like, it's my fried green potato moment. I'm like, that when Kathy Bates hits that car, I'm like, I got better insurance. I'm like, I'm going to buy my own lights. So, and I poured everything into it, including not seeing my parents during COVID because they're in Korea. So I had this angst, and it's about like the loneliness of an elderly woman. So that short, and Leica saw it, and they told me later, that's why I got the grant. So when I got that grant and finished that short, I applied and got the HBO grant, fellowship. But here is also, but there's a dark side to fellowship too and grants, because once you get them, you don't own your films. You give away your rights. So you have to make a decision, what's more important. So for me, I'm in an investment phase of my career, so I'm like, I'm not going to be precious. I'm just going to give it all away and learn and elevate my skill. So there's pros and cons, and you have to kind of weigh in what's right for you.
I like the phrase, the dark side of fellowships.
There is a dark side.
It's like Lord of the Rings.
No, because we all, like, everybody's so envious. I'm like, you have to know it all. And actually, I learned so much doing this HBO, and it was a fantastic journey. But there was a little bit of an incident that really taught me about how industry works. So I'm like, in my next short that I just completed, and like, everything is about what you know and gives me my next story. It's about a fly that is shit in life. And it's like, I need to make a better decision. So it like gave me another story too. So it's like, you have to sort of like, as a storyteller, what we do, we're able to, it's like a therapy, right? And you don't have the negative experience eat you up. You can make it into art. And everything I experience, it's a story for me. So like, you have to be careful around me, because I'm going to use you.
Right.
Well, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm curious, how did you get Constance Wu attached to the movie?
Constance Wu had a crush on me for years. No, We found Constance Wu through a friend, actually. She had reached out to a friend of mine, and this was well before Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh, okay.
And I auditioned her along with many other excellent actresses in LA, and she was fantastic. And it was at a time when she wasn't able to help out financially at that point in her career. And she, just to give you a sense of the budget scale of the film, she brought, like everyone else, she brought her own costumes, she did her own hair and makeup. She stayed in the same less than desirable bed and breakfast in Berkeley, California as everyone else, and she was fantastic. And you could see it immediately, actually from the audition on. She was fantastic. She was totally focused. She was really, and she had a huge range.
When you get somebody like that in a movie that's kind of small, how much do you go back and then tailor to her? Like, you have your script that you want to make the movie. Do you make any changes because you have somebody who's a star in it?
I didn't. To me, that question is more, if they're not a great actor and they're a star, then you have to make trade-offs. With Constance, I didn't have to make trade-offs. She was fantastic and she was a star. And so I didn't have to make any different decisions than I would otherwise.
She's great in the movie, too, for those of you that haven't seen. Was there any other...
Hi, my name is Alexia. I'm a Hispanic-American filmmaker, and I've always done narratives. I'm delving into the world of documentaries right now.
Don't do it, run away.
It is a passion of mine, and I have a great story, and both of yours are very intimate. And as you said, Paula, it's important that the subject is comfortable. So how large were your crews in your films?
It really varies based on the film, and as I mentioned, that I really like to tell stories that are really intimate. So I do think it's really important to keep as small of a footprint as possible. So, but then you want to have 2 cameras, and then you want to have and then you want to have somebody else who's been producing with you in there because they know some things, and so it gets there's a lot of decisions that you have to make, but I always try to have as few people in the room as possible, especially when you're doing an interview. I think that when you're doing verite, sometimes it's not as important, and you can do a long lens, and so you're not right in people's faces. But I think it's really important when you're doing, especially the interviews, to have a really small crew in there. And, you have your PAs and your interns and people who, like, they bring in a chair and they would just want to sit there, and it's like, okay, I'm going to watch the show. And you have to, explain to them that that's not, that you don't want the people to feel like they're performing in any way, because they are not actors and they don't want to feel like actors. So I think it's really important to try to keep it as small. You might have people who aren't in the room if you have a larger crew and you have a budget to be able to support that. I'm doing a series right now for Stars about sexual abuse in the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. And we had 2 camera shoots for these interviews, and I actually had my DP. We had and there were women who were speaking, so I just wanted all female crew in the room. So we had to have female audio, which is not always easy to find. But we had 2 cameras, and the second camera operator, a male, so he would set it all up, and then he would leave the room, and she was running 2 cameras. So I think it's really important to try to keep it as small as possible.
I learned how to run sound just to get one more person out of the room while shooting interviews. Paula, you said you shot a lot on the iPhone at the beginning?
Well, I done a very different kind of projects. Some are big, and these ones are kind of small. But when you're trying to do a film that is more experiential, I mean, that is, it's kind of you being the liaison with your audience and trying to translate this experience that you're having with the story or the character. You definitely want to have yourself out of the frame, but yourself as a crew member, and hopefully, the minimal equipment. I do a lot of my camera work, so people get used to seeing me with rig, and and I behave like it's nothing. But it's challenging because it's easier when you can have a sound person. When it's interviews, it's different because then you can kind of isolate the verite aspect of the film with a more of a setup, and that's where you have to take decisions about who should be in the room and that kind of thing. But we done films that are major productions, and not all the production has to be involved with the verite aspect of the film. You might have drones, and you might have more sophisticated equipment, which are shoots that are happening parallel or later, or it depends on how you design and view the story and the point of views that you want to bring in. I mean, I shot in the last scene, which I just ended up using 2 shots of it with 5 cameras, and I have all that footage that it's not in film. There are only 3 shots at the end, but you never know because you are trying to capture something that it's always you're always guessing what's going to happen.
Documentaries are a little bit strange in that, as someone who watches a lot of documentaries for the film festival, I can tell you we forgive technical flaws with documentaries. You like the lighting's not great. That doesn't really matter to us. But the thing that we always are looking for is like uniqueness in the story or a point of view or an emotion that we otherwise couldn't get. That's not true of narratives. If a narrative looks like garbage, it's going to be usually not good. Documentaries, when you put it on, it could look bad and like it's the best movie you've ever seen. Not talking about anyone specifically. Don't give me that look.
Well, except when you get a network note. Did you have a camera on that? No, I would have used it.
It's great when you go to sell something and they're like, but this isn't shot in 4K. And you're like, yeah, I didn't think of that at the time. You're right. I didn't have $100,000 to spend on the budget.
This question is for the narrative directors. I was just curious what you would say was your most satisfying moment of the experience, whether it was actually finishing the film or if there was a moment shooting on set or just, what was the most satisfying part of the process for you?
Let's rephrase. Was there a satisfying moment in making it?
Getting into the Florida Film Festival, obviously. I mean, there was a lot of satisfying moments throughout. I think that's the only thing similar to shooting a movie that I found is like maybe playing with too much money in Vegas at the table. Like there's really high highs and really low lows, and they go back and forth and back and forth. So I could pinpoint a lot of really satisfying moments. I mean, they vary so greatly from, when we first heard that someone like Dylan wanted to be in the movie, and I was like, okay, so that this is getting closer. And then you fast forward and we're in downtown Indianapolis, and we're in catacombs underneath the city. That's mirroring the basement of this house that we're supposed to be in, and we have a 400-pound pig in the basement in these catacombs, and the pig is not wanting to stand on its mark, and we have to shoot the whole scene that is about this pig, and people are talking about it. So we're in the tights and we're in the close-ups, and we're shooting our 2 shots, and we have one of our actors who's holding a leash, and we just have cut it off right there because we can't. And the leash was literally tied to an apple box because the pig wasn't there. And this entire day of a 20-day shoot is based around this pig eventually being in the wide shot. And the pig at one point took a nap, and no one could wake it up. I mean, and so we ended up going hours into overtime trying to get this pig onto its mark. And I have line producers coming up and being like, this is thousands of dollars every minute. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. If that pig is not on the mark, we don't have a movie. And eventually we got the pig onto the mark, and we rolled, and the pig it stood there for like 5 seconds, and it's all that we needed. And we were all able to go home after that. And that was deeply, deeply satisfying because it was so terrible before. So I think in indie filmmaking, a lot of the most satisfying moments are preceded by the worst moments you could imagine.
And then it's similarly in post.
I want to intercut that pig story with Hitchcock's thing about how actors need to be treated like cattle.
That pig may have ended up getting paid more than Dylan by the end, and how much it cost us in overtime.
But he's bacon now, so it's all.
It was actually a family pet in the local Indiana area. So it'll live a long and full, I don't know how long pigs live, but whatever a long and full life is for a pig, hopefully. And then same thing in post. Like the first time you watch your rough cut, you want to throw up. And then once we went to our post house and saw it fully finished, that was extremely satisfying. So it's the range of emotions that I think make the really good moments feel so good.
Yeah, I think I had a couple pig on the mark moments too. That's now it's a new term.
Hashtag pig on the mark.
Yeah, the modern lexicon of independent filmmaking. But yeah, the unexpected successes or the surprises. There was a shot of Constance actually near the end of the film where she was watching a film within the film on a computer monitor on her desk, and she was actually not watching anything. And I was trying to convey to her, this is what this means to you, this is what it is. And she gave this beautiful performance. And then when we intercut it with this footage later, that was supposed to be what she's seeing on the screen, it just came alive. And I remember when I saw her performance right there, I did it. And I wanted to start crying, and then she was looking at me like, what is your problem? And she says, I really don't know what I'm doing here. But that was a wonderful surprise. And also scenes coming together in ways that you didn't expect, that you didn't write. All of a sudden, hey, there's this footage, there's that character, and they come together in a totally different way from what you expected. And when that happens on a higher level in the film, that's also a huge high. And then also the rough cut, wanting to kill yourself, yeah, there's that too. So there's the ups and downs, and hopefully there's enough good moments, pig on the mark moments.
It's even worse with documentaries because they're like 3.5 hours long and they're not good. So not only is it bad, but it also is like most of a day. I'm curious for the both of you, since you both do a little bit of acting, what's it like working with someone who's like, you know, like Dylan or like Constance, who's like they're so clear with their weapon? Like, do you ever find yourself being like, God damn, they're good, or like, are you jealous to the point of you're like, that's not me, I can't do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the jealousy stops when you get to the other side of the camera, because at that point their talent just benefits you. But absolutely, I mean, when you work with people, you know, Dylan's been in the business for a long time. Patrick Warburton, who was, I mean, an absolute treat to work with. He's one of the greatest guys. Working with him was absolutely iconic for me personally. And when you work with people like that you've grown up watching, and then in person, not only are they good people, but they're hardworking and they show up prepared. I mean, everyone in our cast was not only talented, but yeah, they showed up prepared and energetic and excited to work, and that's not always the case. So just grateful every time I showed up and they were showing. You know, I think it's difficult when you're going through the most stressful thing that you've ever done and you're met with like apathy or something. Like if that's the worst emotion to be met by. So when anyone cares, it makes a world of difference. And yeah, the professional actors that I worked with absolutely cared.
Do we have other? There's one in the front.
I have another question about the animal related. You have a turkey in your film that has something thrown in its face.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how much of that is from real life, because you said a real turkey does show up, but how much of that is real and how much of it was made up, and where did you find the inspiration for the parts that were made up?
Okay, so before I answer that, it's part of it. The reason, like, one of the things you always have to, because animation is just like same as live action, especially in stop motion, but you have to lose my why does this have to be animated? And it's because I could control my animals. Because I knew going in, and I told HBO, I'm going to be hurting this turkey, and I know PETA will come after me, so I can do whatever I want. And when this really happened, when I moved to Jersey City, a wild turkey showed up, and they called a bomb squad, and they came with shotgun, and the whole neighborhood came out, and they were not drawing gun. They were like, "Hey, how are you doing, Josie?" And they were high-fiving, and they just wanted a day at a block with the people they knew, and we were just watching as newcomers, like, this is insane. And Turkey took a shit, and everybody cheered, and it just flew away. And I was just like, and I just remember, and I was not a storyteller then. I was like, this is the craziest thing I ever watched, and I am going to remember this day. And it just stayed with me for years. And then my first student short was about wild turkey, called Wild Turkey, but I didn't know how to animate, so it was a terrible short. But obviously the story stayed with me a long time. And the lipstick stain, absolutely the true story. So pretty much everything. The only thing that didn't happen was them serving me turkey. That that didn't happen, but everything pretty much. And I don't think I'm a good enough storyteller to come up with a story that I didn't personally experience. So everything is it's a snippet. I draw from what I know and the people I know and all the experience I know. Yeah. No.
She was asking about the ending, and she said that was anyway.
Yeah, you have to come watch tonight. For those people who didn't.
That's a good reminder that tonight it is playing at 9:15 at the Regal.
Yeah.
Duel is playing today at 2 at the Regal. Parker's playing at 5 at the Enzian. And Imelda Is Not Alone is playing at 4 at the Regal as well. Oh, all the way in the back. Hold on, was that you have to ask it in a microphone, or it doesn't exist? I mean, it does. I'm not saying, you know what I'm saying. There's a microphone. You need to say it because there's a live stream.
I have a question for the narrative filmmakers. What do you incorporate your dreams or the experiences that you have while you're dreaming into your work? Does it have a very direct impact, or is it more subconscious? What is that for you? And then also for the documentary, if that also impacts your work as well.
How often do you dream about killing your best friend? Is what
I'll answer first because I'm sure he'll have a more eloquent answer. So
that's a lot of pressure he just put on you.
Yeah, sorry. That's interesting. I mean, so our movie, for those who've seen it, and hopefully those who are going to come see it at 2 p.m. at the Regal, our movie kind of feels a bit like a fever dream throughout. Things happen very quickly and get out of hand very quickly, and that was a large. There's a similarity in what the film is kind of going through in that fever dream sense as it was to the feeling of making the movie, which is kind of overwhelming and things were moving quickly. In regards to actual dreams itself, I can't think of anything in particular that I specifically dreamed about and put into the film. There were many times in post-production where my brother edited the film where I woke up at like 3 a.m. and after, it was maybe like the 5th or 6th time I swore to him that the picture was locked. I would wake up and just send him a stream of consciousness over text of things that we had to continue trying. So something was going on when I was sleeping that made me think of some of those things. One of the bigger set pieces in our film was originally supposed to take place at sunrise, and when we ended up going up to Washington State to talk to that producer, we couldn't go into his house because it was during COVID and his elderly mother was there, and we'd just been on a road trip to get up there. So he set up a tent in the wooded portion of the property and gave us cougar mace and set up a campfire and gave us script notes. And every time our computer would run low on battery, he'd ATV out to us, pick it up, go charge it, and bring it back. And the big set piece that was supposed to take place at sunrise ended up taking place around a bonfire in the middle of the night instead. So I think there's definitely, I wouldn't say fully dreams for me, but definitely set and setting. It absolutely influenced the writing process.
Can you top Cougar Mace Bonfire?
No, I can't.
I said eloquent.
No, okay.
I can't top the pig. I can't top the cougar.
But you have Constance Wu, so that's kind of,
Can I ask, why do you ask about dreams specifically?
It's going to get meta.
For me, it's multifaceted. I find dreams to impact me at the emotional level, right? It's not something that I actually see, but I felt in the dream, and it's beyond language. Yeah. So it's something that can never be expressed directly, 1-to-1 ratio. And then also images. For me, I'm a very visual person, and so dreams, what I see in dreams, I won't necessarily see a moving image, but it will be an image, and there will be a mystery to it. And there's an investigation that goes on at the conscious level and at the subconscious level. And the way you investigate it is through making work, through writing, through coming up with stories to unlock it and to follow that mystery.
Thanks. It's an interesting question, and I think about dreams personally a lot. Also in the film, there are quite a few dream sequences. There are a number of fantasy sequences where the character is fantasizing about some ridiculous outcome that he would love to see come to life. And the character also gets confused between dreams and a multiverse or an alternate reality. And so, yeah, it's a big part of my life personally, as well as a big part of the film. And the mystery, as you said, it's a constant mystery. And like you wake up in the morning, you had a very vivid dream, you can't remember it 100%, and you can feel it fading from your mind. And sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night having had a very vivid dream, and I'll record a little voice memo on my phone so I can remember it later, but I listen to them later and they're almost always completely incoherent.
Wow.
But at least I remember what the main subject was. But the dream world is fascinating to me, and I've really enjoyed several films that incorporate that. To me, Inception was extremely literal, and I didn't really find it that interesting because it was more almost just a very precise dissection of world within world within worlds. But what was the name of that Netflix series with the dreamer? Does anyone remember that? Shoot. With Tom Sturridge?
Oh,
Someone used their phone.
I didn't know I was going to have to answer questions. I thought I was just asking questions.
Sorry, it's like...
I'm unprepared for this.
Was it Awake?
No, it wasn't. You know, this is... Don't you hate it when people do this? Like, there's this film with a guy, and
Is that the night something or other? The night manager clerk thing?
It was a series, a six. Anyway, it was a wonderful series, sort of set in a gothic milieu, and these characters. There's a god of dreams, a god of this and that, and they explored the idea of dream reality just in a beautiful way. If you get a chance to view this film, whose name I didn't give you, The Sandman. Thank you.
You guys, we couldn't pull the name for one of the most famous graphic novels in the history of graphic novels in a room full of 40 people. I'm disappointed in all of us right now.
But no, thank you, Sandman, and thank you for that great question.
I want to add something to that, because I also think, I'm also fascinated by dreams, and my husband and I try to remember every morning. We're always asking each other, what'd you dream last night? Before it's too late and it's gone. But the other thing that I think is related to that is memory. And I'm really fascinated with how we remember things and recall things. And especially as a documentary filmmaker, when you are interviewing someone and you want it to be interesting and there's some way that you have to illustrate that, if it's, so that's when we get into kind of telling it in more of a narrative way. And I'm doing that in the series that I mentioned about abuse. And we remember things in little fragments, and I feel like that's, when people talk about it, you can just kind of show people the little fragments, because that's how we recall things. We don't remember what happened to us in the whole 30-minute span. It's like this really quick snippet in our head. And I think that that's fascinating. And we, it's because in documentary we have our narrative portion of it when someone's telling, like, they're either a backstory or telling something that they remember, that, and many times it's trauma that they're talking about.
I was going to say, with documentaries, we lay awake at night so we don't dream because we're worried that the movie doesn't work. So that's kind of the main difference, I think.
I want to add a little bit of that. I think that dreams are fed by other emotions and realities, and they take shape in our dreams. But sometimes it's about those feelings of nostalgia, or that are kind of abstract nostalgia or identity or belonging that you don't know how to articulate. And then they show up in your dreams, and and might not be images, but it might be this feeling that you wake up with, and you wanna that it tints the rest of your day or the rest of your shoot, or and I think it's very precious, and that you should be able to that you must take it and translate it into whatever it is that you're doing that day. I made a film called Alborada, which is about my mother in post-war and this little town where I live called Suchitoto, and how people kind of heal their war wounds after the war, and it's all about emotions. It was a film that I started doing as a fiction film, and well, started as a documentary. Nobody wanted to talk to me in front of the camera, and I said, okay, I'll do a fiction film, and I'll take all the stories that people are telling me, but they wouldn't say on camera, and just put them in a format that says dialogue, so and so, so and so, and then I will sit down with people and say, okay, do you want to tell me your stories? No. Do you want to be my actress? Oh yeah. Oh really? Okay. And what's your name? Oh, I will be Rosita. Okay, Rosita. And this person already had told me their story, so I would put it like in a script form, painfully just formatting, and I say, okay, you sit there, and I will ask you a question. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize this script. And you say, okay, Rosita, what's your name? Oh, my name is Rosita. Rosita, tell me, how did you get to this town? And then they start telling you the story, because that's the story that they know. Never used that footage, but it helped me get everybody involved in the project and feel safe about telling the stories. And then one day I started shooting with my phone. This was 4 years later. I started shooting with an iPhone 9, I think it was at the time, and it looked really nice on my phone. And I went back to New York and to the post house and said, what is this? And then began understanding the limitations and possibilities of using the phone and the type of lighting that worked and didn't work. And I went back and started shooting the documentary. By then, everybody was my producer. Everybody would say, mire, Niña Paula, there's a man that tells these incredible stories. Do you want to go? I said, yeah, okay, I'll pick you up. And they would, I would shoot everything for years, and then I made this documentary. But it was all about translating all that footage through this sense of my own emotional feeling of being there, not being there, my mother, the war. I mean, everything translated through those images on that story.
So we're running down to the last 10 minutes just to give you, if you haven't had the courage to ask a question yet, it's now or not never. I mean, like, you could probably do it when we go over there and have coffee in a minute, but like it's running out of time.
Well, I have a question for Justin and Daniel. First, about Patrick, the mustache really plays. And I was wondering if that was part of the art direction, was something that he brought to the character, and did you guys ever have any conversations about the characters, and how they were, and discussions or maybe arguments with talent about, how they were perceived?
Actors always want to bring a mustache to the movie. That's like a thing that they're like, I think that this would work.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up Patrick and the mustache, because so Patrick was one of the later hires. We didn't have someone to play his role, even like as late as 10 days out from production. It's really scary. And Dylan and Patrick had the same agent at UTA, and his agent was like, well, I sent the script to Patrick. Let me see if he's read it. Patrick had been busy, then he finally read it. And he immediately got in touch with us, and I'm on Zoom with Patrick Warburton, and I needed anybody, but Patrick would be like the dream person, and now we have him on Zoom, and he's auditioning for the role, and me and my creative partner are like, let's not look too desperate. Let's let him think that he might not have it yet. He could just be like, I'm Patrick Warburton, I'm going to come do the movie. We'd be like, yes, you are, absolutely. But part of that Zoom,
sold.
Yeah, part of that Zoom, I guess he had the mustache that he'd grown out during COVID, and he was really looking to use it in something, and he was like, the role of Christoph would be perfect for this mustache. And I was like, yes, I agree. So I think the mustache was part of him being interested in the role to begin with. So it was a very influential mustache in my life. But in general, the actors were really collaborative in regards to the looks of their characters. Christian McGaffney, who plays Joey, who's hilarious in the film, he was also another late hire. He was actually the last person. We had someone else playing that role, and that person dropped out like 3 days before we started shooting to do a TV show that they got hired on. And we were freaking out. And Christian is married to Maria, who's one of the actresses in our film who was already hired. And we were like, do you think your husband would maybe want to do this movie? Because we'd seen them in some YouTube skits together. And she's like, yeah, he's free. So got on a plane, came out, and before I even met him, I show up on set, and they're like, yeah, Christian's here. I was like, oh, I can't wait to meet him. Where is he? They're like, oh, he's at Hair and Makeup. They shaved his head. And I was like, oh, I feel so bad. We didn't ask him. We didn't ask for that. Like, did they think that we asked for that? And I went over. I was like, Christian, I'm so sorry. He turns around. He's like, isn't it going to be amazing for this character? Da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, it was fantastic. It was perfect for the character. And then when he did his first take, he was like 10 times better than the other guy, and we were absolutely thrilled.
Do you want to publicly shame the other person now?
No names. But yeah, so Christian knows that we're super happy with him. But anyways, yeah, in regards to actors changing appearances, I think if an actor is really passionate about a particular look, that's only a good thing, and you should let them run with it, unless it's completely opposite of what you imagine for the character. But yeah, everyone was really collaborative in that sense.
I'm excited to giggle every time I get on Soren from now on, to be like, ha,
yeah.
Mustache. There was one more question, I think.
I have a question for the documentary filmmakers and also narrative. If you interview people on a subject and they have conflicting stories, how do you handle that in your content? Or do you address that at all?
That's where the drama is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we lean into it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's always really, actually you find that a lot when people tell stories, because the stories we tell always vary. So that's very, it's interesting, it's compelling. Usually because you're building up so much trust with people, you're not sharing with them what other people are saying. So you're just asking them to tell the story. And over time, they may ask. You may say you may, and I usually say, well, why don't you ask them if they know the person well, and so they could ask the other person like how that story is being told. But it's it's definitely something that happens and that we look for, and that's where the relationship also comes in terms of trusting, the trust that you develop, because before you show the first screening, you do want to set people up to know that there are things that they might not like, but hopefully you've been authentic and you're telling their particular story in an authentic way.
Well, everything happens. I mean, everything can happen. In the case of Imelda, the first time that I interviewed her in the hospital, she was a scared girl in making stories up about why and how she got pregnant. And she told a story, yes, this boy, but he's not here anymore. And you listen to her and say, well, it doesn't sound believable, but who am I to, I don't know. And that's the beauty of spending time with them through years. Mm-hmm. Because eventually, when she was confident enough to tell the lawyer that she had been abused by the stepfather, and that DNA test proved that the baby was his. But that was not the story she told me the first time. And what can you do? It's just, I don't know what I would have done with that story if I had not spent the time with her through years and see the development of that. But it happens all the time.
And actually, I want to add that in Parker, what's interesting is that nobody really understands. Everyone had a different idea of why they didn't have the name Parker. And then even someone says, like, I don't really even know. So they kind of find out through the documentary process, and even the mom, Parker's wife, who did not tell Parker that his son was his son for 3.5 years. I had to interview her. I interviewed her 3 different times. I mean, we were already in post with it because it was not clear, and she really wasn't at first wanting to tell the whole story about why it happened, and then she finally did.
Something else that's common is that because from the documentarian's point of view, you are covering different people or angles of the story, that when the group gets together and sees the film, they learn about what the other ones are doing. And it happened to me very clearly with the Toucan film, because I was documenting the work that many people were doing, from individuals to groups and associations, and they all knew each other, and they kind of knew the work that everybody was doing. But to see it on the screen and see the impact that all those little efforts made and the result of it, it was really amazing. Say, oh my God, actually that little grain of salt that I'm putting in this theme, it has an impact. And it's not that they don't know, but to see it in the screen and seeing all together from different point of views, it's a major.
We are unfortunately at the end. But before we go, shameless self-promotions. How do the audience, people find you on social media, or where do you want them to go look for your movies? Anything that you'd like to tell them? This is your time. Daniel, why don't you start?
I kind of fear and loathe social media, but the movies, you can check out, at least the website is eastbaymovie.com. There's a fun trailer on there, and we've got a couple competing offers for distribution for East Bay, and hopefully we'll have a pretty clear idea, or we'll be announcing something pretty soon. So eastbaymovie.com. Thanks.
Thank you.
Follow at Dylan Sprouse. He's the key to the marketing for our whole movie. We're also talking to distributors right now, and I think we'll be closing a deal soon. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but potentially limited theatrical. So we'll need absolutely as much support as possible if and when that happens. So first of all, if you haven't seen the movie, it's literally in an hour and a half. So you should go watch it before I tell you to tell your friends about it. If you don't like it, don't tell anybody anything. But yeah, so hopefully sometime before the end of the year, it'll be out.
You're in the festival, like we invited you here. They're like, they might not like it. I don't know.
Parker will have distribution. I can't announce it yet, maybe at the end of next week. But it will be streaming. And I have a film on HBO called Transhood that you could check out. And I have a film called The Filmmakers that's on Disney Plus that I did with National Geographic. And I also have my website is Horizon Productions, HER, productions.com.
You can catch Welcome to A Street on HBO Max streaming. Animated short series. It's episode number 2. And there's a story before this, Same World, 7.8 ounce. You can catch that on New Yorker on Screening Room. And meetyoulee.com.
Imelda doesn't have a distribution yet, but you can please join us in Facebook. Imelda is not alone is the name of the page, and we will keep updating that. Also in Facebook and Instagram, Paula Heredia. I will happy to be friends.
Thank you guys so much for coming.